Water's in the cooler and Waterloo's. Okay?
Thank you.
And I'll
Thank you.
get some food.
Thank you.
Awesome. Well, thanks for having me. Again, my name is Emily Dean, and I am the government, or not government affairs, I do government affairs, but I'm the Director of Advocacy for the Montana School Boards Association. So a big piece of my job is working with the legislature, helping our districts advocate for their students in schools. I also work with all of the state agencies, so OPI, Governor's Office, DPHHS when we need to, and then I also do all of our advocacy with our congressional offices. And we actually just got back on Thursday from our annual trip to Washington, D.C., where we meet with all of our congressional delegation and talk about what's happening in schools and what school board members need and what students need. And so it gives me a good, I think, kind of background when I start coming into school districts and helping with strategic planning, because so much of that gets weaved together. I also, prior to being at MTSBA, I was a high school social studies teacher, and really loved being in the classroom. But I also started to realize that I could do a lot of things outside of the classroom that could help impact positive policy for students. So now I get kind of the best of both worlds. Every time I walk into a school, though, I'm like, oh, especially at the beginning of the year, I miss it. But hopefully this will be a couple really helpful sessions for you. This first session, we'll spend the first part of this talking a little bit about what strategic planning is, why it's important, kind of a baseline of what the state expects and what the state constitution requires. Montana is very unique, and we'll get into that in terms of what our state constitution expects out of our schools and our impact on students. And then we'll start talking about what's called our core ideology, which is made up of your core purpose and core values. MTSBA uses the Jim Collins strategic planning methodology. There's lots of different strategic planning methodologies, so a lot of this, the vocabulary, you can trade in and out, and it doesn't have to be, sometimes it sounds a lot more complicated than it is. And this is your strategic plan, so if at any point you want to adjust how we're talking about things, we can absolutely do that. We just want to keep kind of that consistent purpose and strategy throughout the document. And ideally, when you are done putting together the strategic plan, you'll adopt it as a board, take public comment, make any changes, and then that is it really should be a living document that you use to create action plans, staffing, any type of programming you're pursuing, and then you want to look at it every year and do more like a full update every 3 to 5 years. We have a lot of districts who, if they stay consistent with their strategic plan and kind of implement it with fidelity, they see a whole bunch of improvements over 5 years, and they get to say, okay, we achieved all of these things, whether it's building new buildings or expanding different programming or increasing student achievement data. They can hit those benchmarks and then say, okay, what's next? And so it feels like a lot more productive than just spinning your wheels with the same challenges every single year. It also keeps you ahead in terms of what the legislature is very fickle, and there's always lots of changes and there's a lot of things to keep up with. And oftentimes if you can be implementing the goals within your strategic plan, you're one step ahead of where they might be, and it's also a really great opportunity to educate legislators in your area as to how wonderful your school district is and how improvements that you've made have made positive impacts on kids. And they're documents that they get, because sometimes walking into a school, they have no clue what they're looking at or what they're experiencing, and so this is the kind of thing that speaks a little bit more of their language. Okay. Okay, there we go. So purpose of strategic planning. This is, as I mentioned, MTSBA uses the Jim Collins method. He says that the fundamental distinguishing dynamic of enduring great organizations is that they preserve a cherished core ideology while simultaneously simulating progress and change in everything that is not part of the core ideology. Essentially, if it's not helping you achieve your goals, why are we doing it? Sometimes that can be a little bit more complicated when it comes to schools, but I think that there's a really, there are thoughtful ways in which you can integrate like the basics of schools and while still being innovative. A couple things, well, and I should add a number 4 onto this. Why is strategic planning necessary? One, the state requires it now. And so that is one really good reason. But 2, it does create an opportunity to have some clarity around what a board actually thinks as a body in terms of where a district should be going. I hope this will be an opportunity for all of you to speak really openly and freely. There are no dumb comments or questions here. It really is an opportunity to have brainstorming sessions and consider, like, you know, I always like to say it's the Oprah question of if Oprah came in and said you can have whatever you want and no cost is no option, what does that look like and what are the outcomes that you want for kids? And then we figure out what are the barriers that are keeping you from getting to that place, and then how do we eliminate them? So really it is just an opportunity to set a direction that is adopted by the board, that gives clarity not just to the board but to staff and the parents and students that are in your school. Okay, you all are the ones driving the ship, and so if you don't know what direction the district's going in, the likelihood of someone else knowing what direction it's going in is going to be very low. You also are in charge of ensuring that you hire staff that is responsive and accountable to producing outcomes for kids. And so this strategic plan gives you really a baseline to say, you know, this is what we expect when any child walks into our school district, and this is what their experience will be when they're leaving the school district. And then obviously the oversight piece is really critical. All right. So we look at strategic planning on a scale that's 1 to 2 years of what we call strategic objectives all the way to a timeless piece. So in a few minutes when we start getting into core ideology, that is the timeless piece. That's the piece that someone could walk into this school district 50 years from now, and the core purpose of the school district has not changed much at all. I think it's actually very similar to how we think about schools more broadly. 50, 100 years ago, the purpose of schools was very similar to what we expect now. We want to produce young people who are leaders, that are good citizens, that care about their neighbors, that are well-rounded, and that have a really excellent education so they can go out and do whatever fulfills them most and provide a living for themselves and their family. So that's that piece that it really doesn't change much. And when we see districts update their strategic plans, occasionally they'll be like, you know, there's a sentence in there that just, there was a particular issue happening in the district and there was a sentence added that really was not reflective of the community. But on the whole, your core purpose and core values will likely not change at all. And we don't see them change much throughout most districts when we do these. We then are going to look at our what's called envisioned future, and that's essentially our big audacious goal. So that's more of a broad statement of these are the things that students have when they leave our school, or these are the things that they experience when they're in school. And then the vivid description is essentially what is the description of those things. So do you have, you know, 100% matriculation to high school? Do you have, you know, 80% of students are proficient in reading. That's where you can talk about, like, these are the examples, the specific examples that will show that we are living up to this big audacious goal. And those are things that you want to be able to achieve within 15 years. And that's, I mean, for some people, it's hard because, I mean, when you think about board cycles as like 3-year terms and the trend of school boards, I mean, I think you're experiencing it right now. The desire to serve is much less than it ever has been. And this is a national phenomenon too. There are more school board members across the country that are choosing not to run for re-election than ever before, and that obviously creates a crisis in stability when it comes to governance of a school district. And so these are some of the things that you want to think about in terms of in 5 terms from now. Say this is your first term, your first 3-year term. In 5 terms from now, when it's the end of your 15th year, what should the school district have accomplished? What do you want kids to feel when they say they attended the school district? How do you want parents to feel about they sent their kids to this school district? And then we get down to some of the critical factors. This is where we will do what's called a megatrends analysis, and then identify some of the conditions that are outside of the school that can impact the way a school operates. So those are things like demographic changes or industry changes or changes in societal values related to education or not. Anything that's from the outside that could impact the school in this 10-year plus or minus time span. And then we get down to what the actual, I mean, this is like the guts of your proposal and your strategic plan is the objectives, or excuse me, the goals, and then strategic objectives. Our goals, we're going to pick like 3 to 5 because we want them to be attainable, and if you have 15, you're not going to get there. And so those are the 3 to 5 goals that you can complete within a 3 to 5 year span. And then we will have strategic objectives that fall under each of those goals. So those could be like, I don't know, anywhere from like 2 to 5 strategic objectives that will get you, they're the benchmarks to get you to that ultimate goal. And then this action planning piece, those are the things that you, like, those are the things that this teacher will implement this program starting this year, or we will adopt X policy to help achieve this strategic objective. So it's basically what are the things that are happening by whom right away to achieve those strategic objectives. Okay, so one of the things that I want to emphasize is that the goals and strategic objectives, those are the things that are going to be changing every 5 years or so, and they're all in pursuit of living out your core values and core purpose. And so those are the things that really you want to preserve and try not to change. Sometimes districts, there's reasons to do so, but we rarely see it. Okay, now the fun part. Montana is very unique. We're actually one of 3 states that lists school boards in their constitution. And we are, I would say, the strongest in terms of school boards being the sole entity responsible for the care, supervision, control of the education of students. School boards in Montana are on the same level in a constitutional sense as the Board of Regents in most other states. So our school boards are the one, I mean, the buck stops with you, and the Constitution says the buck stops with you. We have a responsibility. This is the, actually this is what I wanted. We have a responsibility to ensure that our education system fulfills the full educational potential of each person, which is it's like a very lofty and high bar, and that was not always the case. This was updated in the 1972 Montana Constitution. That's what the language currently looks like. This is what the language was in our first 1889 Constitution. Essentially, that we would have a free public education system, and that's it. There was no expectation of what that education would provide you. And so with that, really, really awesome how much opportunity it provides, and that you are constitutionally empowered to ensure that every single kid gets what they need. But it is also a very, very heavy responsibility. And the buck really does stop with our boards. And so that is something that is always a balance, because you don't necessarily get to decide how much funding you always get. You don't get to decide, we could want to hire all the teachers in the world, but we're still constrained by the market and what we can actually afford. And so it is almost a catch-22 in terms of what the Constitution requires and what our reality presents, which is all the more reason why strategic plans are so important, so that you can say, yep, this is what our expectation is, and these are the steps that we're going to take to get to that place. I will also say that, that state constitution is the floor. It is like I always think of it, I think it's because I was a government teacher, but I always think of it as like, you think of the Lincoln Memorial, and you have like the basis, and that is the Constitution. That is the pedestal that everything is built on. And then you have your columns that I always think of as our core values, so the things that actually hold up our school buildings and make them what they are. And then you have, when you put it all together, you have this magnificent structure in which kids get to become their full selves. And so I think that, we should really be considering this strategic plan as, and we encourage every district to do so, is really kind of your North Star in terms of what kids will get out of their education when they come to your school. Any questions about the Constitution before we move on? It's a super cool document. It's actually, if you read some of the delegates' discussion on the floor when they were debating what would be in our 1972 Constitution, there was, it's awesome how much emphasis that was placed on education, and that we would have a Constitution that supported the educational well-being of every kid, regardless of their background or where they came from. Oh, that's actually the quote too. There we go. All right, so moving on to core ideologies. Does anyone have any questions about like how we get to this point? This is going to be the most I talk this entire time, so bear with me. All right, so core purpose. Core purpose is the district's fundamental reason for being. An effective core purpose reflects the importance of people attached to the district's work. It taps their idealistic motivations and gets at the deeper reasons for a particular district's existence. This is the thing that, this entire area probably looked very, very different 50 years ago. But the reason for this district's being has probably not changed a lot. And so when we talk about core purpose, we want to talk about what is our reason for being. If you weren't here, why would that produce a negative outcome for students in this area? What are the things that you want to see students experience and know and believe when they leave here? So we're going to talk a little bit about core purpose, and then we're going to get into core values. These core values are really kind of the characteristics that guide your core purpose. So for a lot of districts, it's safety, responsibility, citizenship, academic excellence, healthy kids. There's a lot of context that you will know in terms of what your students need that would make up those core values. But before we get into those, I think what we'll do is talk a little bit about what the core purpose of your district is. And I take notes like crazy so that I can make sure that the strategic plan actually reflects the discussion. So I'm gonna sit down and type while you all are talking, and so please don't be offended. I'm not looking directly at you. But it does produce a lot better document. So in terms of core purpose, when you think about this district's fundamental reason for being, why are you here? What are your thoughts?
Well, I think it's to help guide these kids to academic and personal success, to be the best they can be.
Yeah. What do you think that looks like? How does that present itself? And other people can chime in too.
I mean, I guess it looks different probably than it did 50 years ago, because now we're having to teach these kids a lot more baseline things than we ever did before. So sometimes it seems like academics sometimes get pushed up a little bit to the side because we have to deal with a lot of
Social
social and emotional behaviors.
Yep.
So I'd really love to see it being more of a balance to that. And yes, helping those kids that need that as well, but making it a very balanced system so that they really are getting that global awareness of all of it.
I think the other purpose of this particular school, in my mind, would have been to keep education and kids close to home. Because if the school doesn't exist, all the kids on this part of town are getting bused to parts of town that they don't live in. And so I think that could be one of the bigger purposes too, is engagement close to where they live.
What, when you talk about, essentially a community school, why is that important to the development of kids?
Well, I think it gives you that, when you have community involvement, you have everybody looking out for the well-being of these kids and everybody helping with their success, not just the individuals at the school.
Yep.
It's more of a global
And they're
partnership, I guess.
interacting and engaging with the community where they live, and that's how they get that commitment of community support.
Yeah. Gentlemen, any thoughts?
I'm getting there.
No problem.
I like what Madam Chair said. I do think it's a whole child approach, social and emotional, behavioral anymore, to meet the needs of our current society. I do think that the community component is important because education is a social event. We have evidence that the online learning, if it's not social, is detrimental. So I think a community school provides connections for the students. It provides grandparents and parents and people of the community to be a part and have voice in where this small community is going, in the social aspect of our kids.
Yeah.
I see that we're here to provide an environment, and this is how I wrote it down. Provide an environment in which students can learn the tenets of society, anchored by a community-based environment. We are community-based, and this community here is still agriculture. So we still need to focus and remember that we are an ag-based state. But we can't forget and lose sight that everything is being driven technologically in this current environment. And like you said, that we can't overlook that modern society isn't teaching the tenets of society.
I think a community approach allows students as they matriculate into adulthood opportunities to explore themselves and how to engage in a safe environment to where they're not injured.
Well, if you don't teach them how to be part of the greater community, how do they go out and do that? Like, if you don't teach them how to, you know, interact with what's around them in a positive way, then they can't go out and continue that process,
Yeah.
you know?
I think that when I'm hearing this piece and then in terms of the tenets of society, what are some of those connections that you think are important traits or characteristics for your students to have or learn to realize that?
Tolerance.
Patience.
Well, fortitude.
Yeah.
Like, maybe you're not successful, but there is the first time, but you keep, you have the resources or know how to handle it. That's the better word.
Perseverance.
But,
Stick-to-itiveness.
yeah, that it's not a definitive place.
Don't know how we say it in language that fits, but we still have to teach our kids that there are people, ways to achieve and ways to fail. That there is achievement, there's failure. Because if you don't learn there's failure, then you can't learn how to achieve.
Well, it's okay to fail. I mean, some of
There's
the,
too many people that are not teaching that.
right. It's, you know, to know that, you know, just because you don't do it the first time doesn't mean you're never gonna get it. That's where that kind of, that stick-to-itiveness or that perseverance comes into play, where you've gotta keep trying, you know? And being aware of others, I think. We've become very closed in and very tunnel focused on self. And I think we have to grow that back out. Like, gone are the days where, you know, you had community meetings or granges or, you know, even the local bar. Gone are those meeting places where you dealt with community. It was all about community and, hey, I've got this going on, I need some help. Sure, I'll be there. Tell me when, you know. You don't see that anymore because everyone's so focused on self. And if we don't teach our kids not to be that way, we're never gonna get out of that hole.
Yeah, community-based environment.
Well, that is, I mean, how many people do you normally have at a board meeting if there's not a contentious item?
Zero.
Yeah. Which is hard because, you know, people have lots of strong feelings about what happens in schools, but so often the engagement doesn't happen until there's a crisis. And then you only get a very small piece of what actually happens in school rather than the larger context of this is what an actual board meeting includes.
I'd like to see the school teaching all the kids on the majority of the kids that learn one way and then each group that learn on both sides.
Yeah.
So I'd like to see the teaching hit all the kids instead of focusing on the main part. I'd like to see the kids that learn left brain way, middle, and the right. I don't know if that's the right terminology, but
Well, really some like personalized learning.
yeah. So I'd like to see that. I know some of my kids struggle a little bit learning the same way as everybody else.
Don't call your employees kids.
They're all kids. That hard.
No, totally. Well, and I think, I mean, we, there's something to be said for living in a society that student attentions are being pulled in a million different directions. And I mean, this has always existed in some form or fashion, that there are pressures to, or less opportunity for kids to explore who they really are, or what they really believe, because of a lot of noise. And sometimes that can be really hard for those kids in particular who may not have the interest in learning in one particular fashion to find that, which is the beauty of personalized learning, but it also comes with high costs and need for technology and people, and you know, throwing a packet in front of every child is not necessarily going to be the best way for everyone to learn. So how do you find the balance of ensuring that teachers have what they need and students are also able to learn in a, you know, in a differentiated fashion?
While keeping the district fiscally responsible.
All right, any other thoughts about core purpose? Do you think that if you asked, you know, one of the parents out in the parking lot, or, you know, someone at the gas station, would they have similar thoughts?
I think so. I mean, for the most part, I think you have kind of, you know, you have the left over here, you have the right over here, and you have that kind of middle road. Like, you have the middle road that is happy that their kids are just learning and being in a safe place, and then you have the wants on both sides, and whatever those might be.
Yeah.
You know, so I guess it really does depend on who you ask, you know. But I think the majority are here because there's something here that they're getting benefit out of.
I think the job of a school throughout history is teaching kids how to think, not what to think.
So developing critical thinkers, essentially. Evaluating information, understanding what sources are.
Productive citizens.
You said safe. I don't know if safety's on there, but I think that's should be one of our purposes too.
Yeah.
Safe
A
place.
safe environment to
Oh, absolutely.
explore. Yeah.
Okay. Great. And well, and you know, when kids understand what safe environments look like, it gives them the skills to seek those out as they continue to grow too, which is really important when, you know, if you're a young person just trying to figure out what the world is and where you fit in.
Right.
Okay.
I think it's a bit of a challenge though. I mean, in my long tenure now in education, I think I didn't want to be the old guy that says it's changed, and I think I am saying that. I don't know how many people are in the middle. I just think we have a lot of extremes, and it's hard for a school to bring it together. Students are behaving on extremes, parents are volatile, they'll attack government agencies, you know, and it's hard to balance that within even this small environment.
Yeah.
Because it used to be a community would come together and they would, you know, there would be some stepping of right or left, but for the most part, it was a group of people that kind of shared in the same vision and direction, and I think that's really declined in terms of what our purpose is pulling that together.
Well, and it puts schools in a really difficult
does.
place when you are the essentially like community glue that keeps communities together. Because I mean, if this school didn't exist, would there be any other entity or group or common place where everyone, regardless of their background, came together around here?
Yeah, and you see, you know, I would challenge the enrollment house bill, you know. that tears down some of the community concept a little bit. And why is that?
Yeah. Well, I think that this is probably a good opportunity to talk, I mean, we can get into it more too, but I mean, there is something, I mean, in terms of, the microcosm of a school, and then what's more of a, not such a microcosm, but of the legislature, you hear the same, I mean, 203 was a result of essentially trying to talk some people off the ledge, of anyone can go anywhere no matter what with no sideboards, and if schools need to close down, they'll close down. Which is not what we, I mean, defeats the purpose of community schools. And I think, you know, what I'm hearing is similar types of extreme on multiple sides, pulling in multiple directions, and then we see the same thing at the legislature. Which is wild, because sometimes, you know, you get people one-on-one and, you know, you can have a reasonable, calm conversation, but as soon as they're into this, you know, environment that everyone wants to keep hyping each other up, and not in a positive way, it creates difficulty. Yeah. Any other thoughts about core purpose? Okay. And we can come back to this. One of the things, there's lots of opportunity between now and when you adopt this to make any changes. So what I will do from this part of the conversation is draft some language, and see if it is hitting the same notes, if you think it's consistent or not. I don't take offense to any of it, so when we get to that point, like, please be totally honest.
And I don't know if, I probably didn't tee you up very well. And I don't know if the board, I probably communicated this poorly. But we are going to get a document from
Yep.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
Emily
awesome.
that will be our strategic plan. So we
That's
won't be
great.
pulling it.
Yeah.
And then you can check that box.
I like it.
You submit to OPI too.
We paid $2 extra for that.
Yeah,
I like it.
yeah.
So
and-
she's gonna be taking notes, she'll pull it together. So it is important that you guys interject verbiage and thinking.
And I will say, there are some districts, I won't say who, but I was in a district a couple months ago, and towards the end of it, there was a very stoic farmer who would just chime in here and there, and he was in tears at the end because he said, we've never had this open conversation because we only ever get to talk about, you know, our budget or, you know, enrollment or this. And so this really, and he was so excited there were other people on the district, on the board that had the same ideas or thoughts, and wanting to, you know, fulfill these goals for students. And so this is really an opportunity to, like, throw out all sorts of ideas and all sorts of thoughts, because there might be someone who has similar thoughts to you, or there might be someone who's on a totally other page, and we can find some common ground about what that looks like in this strategic plan, so that we have something that you can actually utilize, not just have it as a file on a computer that never gets looked at. Okay.
Is family on here a core purpose, and like the importance of having a family structure?
If you
Whether
think it
they're
is, it should be.
related or not, like having a support system, is that something we should find as a purpose? No? Whether it be teachers or somebody after school. Because I think we can teach everybody community, but if they don't have something at home, it doesn't do any good. Community is one way to reach out. I think family is also important to all these kids.
Yeah. I think that's kind of lost, right?
Mhm.
To some
I was
degree.
just gonna say the same thing.
Yeah.
could we be an extension of the family or viewed as, you know?
Right.
Right.
That we're part of that circle to some degree, maybe an outer circle, but
Yeah. I mean, I think sometimes we think about schools as just something that, it is student-centered, but kids are, you know, the beating heart of every family. And if there's a parent that, you know, has a need or resources to be a better parent, schools are often one of the only places that they can turn to get all types of resources, whether it's, you know, who do I call for this type of appointment, or what supports are there for this issue happening at home. I mean, truly, schools are one of those places that people turn to, and you want them to be able to turn to, because there's not many others. And so I think there's a lot of opportunity to think about, you know, how does the school play a role in being a supportive entity for families as a whole. We're having technical difficulties, so just,
Need a bigger hammer.
right?
Do I have to hit anything on that?
I don't know. That's all right. We can look at that in a minute.
that's weird.
Do you have any idea?
No.
It says it's still broadcasting.
That's bizarre.
It's like went to sleep, huh?
Yeah.
Turn it off, turn it on, that's about the extent of
I
my.
know. That's
Technology.
I always get nervous in other schools too, because I know there's always one teacher who has it like fixed just how it's supposed to be.
Right?
I didn't get sodas, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. Oh, there you go. Cool. Good job.
Now what'd you do so we can?
I hit the
Power.
power button.
I think it
but
did fall
So
asleep.
go to sleep?
Must have.
I haven't been cooking.
Wake up.
I know.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about core values. And I think this is actually a really good place to maybe expand our conversation around like support systems or family or like a culture of support. Core values are really those things that like hold up that core purpose. So if one of those things don't exist, it's very hard to live out that core purpose. I hear safety too. I think that's something that, I will say that's something, regardless of what district I'm in, that's almost always one of the top things that, and sometimes we think about it in terms of like physical, hard safety, but there's so much more to that in terms of like if a student feels like they belong, because no kid is gonna, I mean, you're not giving your all if you don't feel like you belong in a place. And so what does that mean? What are the things that ensure that they feel that sense of belonging, and I have safe, trusted adults and peers that I can rely on that are my like tethers to a healthy life? Any thoughts?
Madam Chair, you kind of worked on this document you gave me. You guys all have the core values here. They're actually
And I think,
pretty decent.
I mean, we could build on them.
It's an old document, but I like them.
let me see, did I thought that I had actually pulled some, are these on your website by chance?
I don't think so, but
Okay, there were
what
a
might
few
be,
things that looked like them.
There
when
were
I
a
was-
few things, I think, on the website, but this is about as far as we got, right here.
Okay,
Under our
let's
line
start
right
from, no, that's good.
As far as we got.
How did I put it in here? Oh, okay, let's see. On the website, I had seen respect, empower, achieve, cooperate, help. But I think these, let's start here.
So that's reach and that's kind of like our leadership
Okay,
framework for kids. They get reach cards and that's what those stand for.
that's good context.
But they could be part of this, right?
Yeah, because, and this is what I'll say, I often encourage districts, and I think that the districts that see, kind of the realization and fruition of the contents of their strategic plan, when it's something that everyone in the district knows and understands, so whether that's like having the core purpose as you walk into the school, or every staff meeting begins with just, you know, you don't even have to read them. Like, once people start seeing them, it's part of really embedded into who you are as a district. But it's something that's like a constant reminder to not just parents who walk in, but staff, students. Everyone knows what our expectations are in terms of values and purpose. So I always encourage people to like share them far and wide. And it also is a really great opportunity for new parents to have a really good understanding of where they're sending their kids, and why they should have confidence in that place. But let's look at these. Commitment to students. The Canyon Creek School District is committed to making every decision with the student's best interests as a primary focus. Inspired quality staff. The Canyon Creek School District values inspired quality staff that exemplify integrity, professional growth, mutual respect, and a passion for children. Challenging academics. The Canyon Creek School District is committed to providing challenging academics while addressing each child's unique and diverse needs. Safe, pleasant environment. The Canyon Creek School District values a safe, pleasant environment designed to support a variety of learning tools that challenge, enrich, and advance student learning. Community engagement. The Canyon Creek School District values the support and involvement of our community members. Do we feel like all of this is like very reflective of what the values still are?
I do.
Yeah, I think they're very good. I mean, there's context in history. I'm new to my position. My predecessor did a wonderful job, but there were some dark months, right?
Yeah.
And I think some of the community left. So when you talk about scaling this back into the community, and so people know our signature and know our footprint, I think it's very important.
I don't know how anybody else feels. One of the things that I've seen, noticed, is that 20 years now we haven't passed a mill levy. I think we should put in our core values that we do steward the financial resources we get from our community. In our community engagement, that we take seriously the financial aspects of what we are given.
Something about fiscal stewardship
That's
or
what I
something.
Yeah, fiscal stewardship. And I think to Matt's point, under the, maybe changing community engagement to include
Community and
the family.
family.
Yep. That we support the family unit within our community.
How many times have you tried to run a levy or bond in the last 20 years?
Every year.
Every year.
Every year, and I mean, you're not unusual for a lot of, I mean, which is unfortunate because, again, back to the hearts of every community. Do you feel, I mean, what's some of the feedback that you get?
Well, I think our district is hard because it is very agricultural. I don't want to say, you know, it's not really, you know, producing big agricultural stuff. It's just smaller, older. We have a very older population. I would say over 70% of our population is over 70. And their thoughts to schools, not that they don't support, but they financially can't support. So I think our district is just kind of set up
Well,
in a very different,
Yeah, sorry.
we just don't have some of the commercial things and other resources that other districts have in theirs. We don't have the population either. We're just a more sparse populated district.
Yeah, I guess the two things that stick out in my mind that I've heard the most is I'm on a fixed income, can't afford an increase, or I oppose any government tax, period. And that's how they see it, and so that's a really hard
Yeah.
state to come across or
Yeah.
convince otherwise that
Yeah, right.
this supports the community. So that's what I've heard the most.
Are they
And I would
longtime
agree with that.
residents?
What's that?
Are they longtime residents?
Yeah.
I think the ones that vote, we have such a small
Yeah.
amount that vote and, I think, and I don't know that we're getting most of our votes from the larger agricultural landowners or the condensed housing developments. I don't know where that data is, but,
I mean, all
We have
totally
a
gettable.
small, we have out of the number of registered voters within our district, we also get a small percentage of them actually voting.
And that hasn't
What?
changed.
And that hasn't
it's
changed,
about,
no.
we have about 1,400 registered voters and about
Mhm.
700 vote
Mhm.
Yeah,
at best.
yeah, just
Yeah.
a little over 50%.
And so if we get, anywhere from 40 to 45% in favor, then we've done the best we've done on our levy. Since I've been on the board.
Yeah. Well, and it's hard because, there is, even if, the people say they support the school, and want you to do well, it's hard when there's a need, and you can't meet it because the votes aren't there. That's a really hard reality. But it's not something that's not movable. I think that there are, I was working with a district last year who, actually it was their 2016 strategic plan. One of it was to pass a bond to build a new middle school wing. And they had also not passed one for a long, long time. And they put it in their strategic plan that we would pass it and build it. Because they were at capacity and, things were failing and the building was becoming unsafe. And, but it was like the sole focus. And it was like literally door knocking, like listening to people, bringing in everyone you could, going to them. Which is hard. It's obviously there's you have to be careful in terms of what the law allows for schools to be doing and on school time and the rest. But there are a lot of ways to essentially create a levy campaign. It just it's on top of all of the million other things that a school has to do. But sometimes it took them, that was 2016, and they didn't get it done until, I think it was 2022. And so, a solid 6 years to get there. And it was, squeaked by. So it's hard because the reality is we've had the lowest passage rates of levies and bonds in the state's history across the board, even in communities that always pass levies and bonds. Like even Helena. Rarely a time that Helena does not pass. We didn't pass one in, I think, 2013. And then this year was the first year since then that it did not pass, which is, everyone was shocked, I think. But, it's a weird time right now anyway, in terms of the property tax conversation. So I think, in terms of fiscal stewardship, are there any descriptors that you would like to see included in a core value like that? What does it look like?
I think that one's harder because your community and families and people that come into the school have a different idea of what fiscal responsibility looks like than the actual board does and what it takes. I think that it should be, everyone should have a tour on the board because you learn so much about what is doable, what's allowable, what is, what you're able to achieve versus your wants over here, because that's pretty much what it comes down to. Like, you have all these wants, which is great, but the actual financial support that can come in to get to those wants is very minimal. And I don't think people really understand how boards have to go through this almost gut-wrenching process of like, what are we going to not do to get this other thing done? Because you want to do it all, but you just can't, you know? So,
I think, to add on that, part of fiscal stewardship is budgeting within our means, or our allowed budget, so we're planning appropriately and using our other core values to drive maybe difficult choices we have to make when making those financial decisions. So we have all these things and purpose that we're focused on. How do we stay focused on that when
we can't.
we don't have the funding
Right.
for things that may not be part of our core values, but they're still important,
Yeah.
you know, to the community or school, but, so, I don't know if that,
No, I think the nice thing about these kind of documents and talking through like what your core purpose and what your core values are and what are the goals that are included is that it creates almost a rubric for decision making. And not that you don't want all of these things, and there won't be a time where, you know, there's an issue that is emergent that you need to address right then that may not be stipulated exactly here, but it does give you a guide in terms of if these are the things we really care about and these are the things we really want to achieve, how do we budget to get to that place? And if things don't fall within that, are they critical enough that they should be included? And occasionally that will be the case, but I think normally if you are trying to live out your strategic plan with fidelity, because those goals are intrinsically very important to the way the school operates, it's a really good model or rubric to make judgments on.
Yeah, so it's fiscal stewardship that kind of supports the values of the community. The morals, mores
and
of the community.
And the care of the students.
well, like, I guess I see it kind of supporting our other core values
Yeah.
and purpose, like,
Yeah, that, you know, it still follows our commitment to students and having quality teachers and having that safe environment.
And I think what I can do is I'll add that last. Not that these are necessarily in order of importance, but I think that, you know, when you're reading, whether it's conscious or not, things that rise to the top are what sticks. So I think that it's natural to put that at the bottom and say, and all of these things will guide our fiduciary responsibilities. Okay.
To throw a tangent in there, at what point do we say the legislature's derelict in their duties to support school systems?
You know, you wouldn't be the first.
Maybe the last either.
No. And I think that and these are the things that, we are always looking for people who want to, you know, come be advocates. And the one thing that they've kept from COVID is Zoom testimony. So there are a lot, it is helpful for legislators to hear, like, these are the things that you're asking for and expecting, and these are the reasons that we're not able to get there, that you could help us with. I also I mean, being in the Billings area, you are so close to so many legislators that have a lot of sway and responsibility in the legislature, and so I use that to your advantage. I mean, I always encourage districts, invite legislators from the area to come to the school and see a classroom and learn about what you're doing. We just had at one of the education interim committees on Monday, we had 5 districts of various sizes talking about some of the like innovative programs or advanced opportunities or different type of interesting things that are going on in their school districts. And some of the legislators, I mean, you don't know what you don't know. And so for a lot of them, like they think school is what it was when they were in school 60 years ago for a lot of them. I mean, and so it's changed. I mean, classrooms look very, very different. And the way that we educate students has changed. And so any opportunity that you have or you want to create to bring them in and maybe challenge misconceptions about what a school actually looks like and does, take them. And it goes along, I mean, because then you have a relationship that you may not have had before, and when there's a bill that's coming up that would impact the school positively or negatively, you can say to them, you saw this program, or you were in this classroom, this is what this bill would do to our school. And that kind of tangible outcome, it goes a long way. I mean, that's what changes votes. Not all the time, but a lot of the time. Awesome. Okay, are there any other changes that you see in here that you'd like to update or? I'm wondering on this piece about safe, pleasant environment, is there anything that I mean, it's very geared towards academic outcomes, which I think is good in terms of
But we have that
fulfilling
under
potential,
challenging.
but but I don't know if it's repetitive when I hear some conversation about
An overall
social,
environment.
yep.
I mean, it's something, maybe instead of the last part of that sentence, just having a safe environment to help support kids. I'll just say, like, becoming human beings, becoming, like, I don't know how else to put, like achieving their personal
well-rounded,
best, instead of having it more geared towards the learning piece, just achieving personal success, achieving,
Fulfillment, maybe.
yeah.
The challenging academics value kind of addresses the academics piece and unique and diverse needs of each child.
I think we should say protected environment too, because in safe, in the school system, it tends to go to my emotional needs, I'm safe to express myself emotionally. But I also see that we have a very distinct physical safety issue that we have to address. And the word protected reflects that we are taking our the physical safety of our students in
Or
context.
safe and supportive environment, and that could outline safety to include physical, emotional, social safety. Like you could outline what we mean by that. Because I think safety does encompass all those things.
I think everybody's trying to, think off the hip for these core values. Should we be comparing to other core values around county schools and making sure like we have everything we need?
Well, I don't,
It's like if you Google like Montana core values, there's a lot of things on here that would touch more than the 5 we have. So like student self-esteem is one of them, safe environment, community engagement, we talked about community. I think that might be a good,
Well, we have
community
community
engagement's on there.
I-
Student achievement,
and
And I
we
don't
have
think-
challenging academics.
and I also don't think you wanna get a gazillion core values, and I think you wanna make them broad enough to be achievable and
Timeless.
hit
Right.
all the high notes, I guess, instead of like pigeonholing yourself into a,
When I draft these, I really try to, well, in an education, we love coming up with new fancy terms and like, this is what the new best practices and this, which we want to be using, data-driven best practices, but those are the tools that help us live out these values. And so I really do try to use terms and messaging essentially to create a document that you'll understand, but if you hand it to a random parent, they'd understand and a teacher would understand. So we can, I think I feel like I can thread the needle in terms of balancing like the overall physical safety piece, like when a student walks in, they're not going to be confronted with, a stranger that shouldn't be in the building, while also having the element of there are safe and trusted adults that they can go to when they're in turmoil or crisis or needing support. So I think we can, thread that needle in a way that is not too like heavy or technical. And I will say, like, in terms of like the self-esteem piece, there are some districts that that is like one district in particular that I'm working with right now. They're in like a actual crisis in terms of students just, and I think a lot of it is because they see things online that, perfect lives and all of these things, and so they feel like they are lesser because that is not them, and they are having an actual crisis in terms of student self-esteem and worth, and then it plays into their inability to work as a team or in groups or build any kind of social skills. And so I think when you're thinking about your core values, you want to think about what are the tenets that will address the kids that are in, and families that are in your community, and the values that will help them succeed. And so if that's something that you think, if there's an area in which we need but are maybe lacking or we need to build up, this could be an opportunity to weave in some of that language to ensure that we build it up and then leave it in here so it's sustained for years to come. Does that make sense?
Did you see one, Matt, that isn't already kind of outlined that you thought would be important to include?
well, it's not outlined, but it's more like, this is from 2016, so is there things we want to add to this to more suit everybody, not from 2016,
So,
I did include Bozeman's, I don't know if you fell
Yeah.
through that, they have a comment,
well,
fiscal responsibility, we are fiscally responsible in the management and expenditure of district resources. We could add some that reflect the community as a whole or something like that.
I guess the values in my mind are what doesn't change significantly over time. I mean, modern language or relevant terms, but I guess the values, so, this was just what we have now, but certainly if there's a different value that the community has that you see, we should talk about it.
But I do think if you look at most of them, they all have pretty much what we have.
Right, okay.
In different.
Different
parts.
verbiage, yeah.
So I know we're getting, like, there's one on here, cultural diversity. This was a Butte School District core value, and it believes that the cultural and social diversity are strengths. I mean, our school is very cultural, right?
I wouldn't consider it very diverse.
No,
but
we're getting more diverse.
maybe a little bit, but
Okay,
no, not real.
not really.
I mean, it could be when we think about, like diversity of backgrounds, I'm not sure if that's something you all experience, but there is something to be said for, we just added this, I was just in a conversation with another district about this, but essentially cultivating a value of, and helping support a value of, like understanding and, encouraging diversity of thought and, really a want to know your neighbor. I'm blanking on the actual terms that we used because they were really good, but I will think of them. But it was a really interesting discussion because they looked a lot like Montana, but the backgrounds of their students were coming, there was a lot of diversity in what they looked like. And so, being able to create connections and skills for healthy relationship building and understanding, that could be, could be something that might speak to you.
And even in I agree. In the environment one, you could put a term in there like tolerance or promote diversity.
Support diversity or embrace.
Yeah, embrace, something along those lines, because like Amy said here, it could be a socioeconomic tolerance, it could be tolerance toward our special ed students, people that learn differently, as you said earlier, Matt. Doesn't necessarily have to be people of color, religions.
Okay. I think that we can figure out how to weave some of this in. Anything else? Okay,
Maybe a quick break to get, so they can get some.
that sounds
food.
good, yes.
It's 6 o'clock almost.
Yep.
Yeah. It's sitting over there. I stayed up late preparing it.
It looks amazing.
I thought you got up early to prepare.
No, it's all purchased.
Now, if you beat Sarah to the gym, I'm gonna be impressed.
I didn't sleep last night. I'm pretty tired today.
Oh,
so
no.
we're good.
She opens it now.
I know. It's awesome.
So if you start beating her to the gym,
Yeah, I know. I'll be right on her heels maybe, but I gotta go more.
That's rough on a Monday night.
Des and
Then you
I,
got the whole rest of the week that you have to try to.
so I was texting Sarah before the boys got up. Do you need me to bring you something? She said, bring me some egg bites. When I got there, delivered them. Des said, yeah, this 5 a.m. No, just no.
I'll eat without you guys.
Please eat.
Yeah, please do.
So I gotta
You as
answer
well.
this stupid thing.
Well, things I'm good right now.
I'm ready.
It looks really good.
I drove by the school on the way to work the other day. You were outside in the corner with shorts and a sweatshirt on. Was it cross country practice? It's like
What day was it?
can't remember if it was.
Was it Friday?
Maybe. Yeah, it was Friday because there was no school.
No school, but I was working. Our UPS guy, you know, he's a big biker,
Oh,
and he came in and was complaining about our go-ahead weed issue. He said, you guys are growing go-aheads around here, and I don't like those. You need to take care of that, so
they do pop bike tires.
they do, they do.
But I'm like, I don't even know what a go-ahead weed looks like.
Oh, really?
I've just seen the thorns, you know?
They are the nemesis of my husband, so
Yeah.
very familiar.
I started mountain biking early, years and years ago, and I went to Aurora in Colorado, in Denver. Aurora, or Cherry Creek maybe it was, and they have a little pond there, we went riding around there. And I didn't really have any protection or anything. I probably had 80 go ahead, and I had so many flat tires, and I couldn't, it was miserable.
Where we lived in California, the kids biked, so we were in a neighborhood that was still building homes at the time. So there was lots of weeds. And we got special, we went to the bike shop and had their tires lined. There's a special hard plastic insert they can put between the tube and the outside, so it helps
Okay.
with that. So we had fewer flat tires. But yeah,
They're nasty.
they are.
Funny.
So I think he wants me to go out there and pull them all out, and I'm like,
Maybe you can tell him he can come volunteer for the
Wow.
school.
yeah. I thought about bringing,
The chemical to spray it is expensive too, so it's not really
Super
reliable.
expensive. The pre-emergent stuff's like $100 a.
Wow.
well, I bought this cool thing on Amazon. It's not real efficient, but it's called the Weed Weasel.
Oh, that's amazing.
It's a little torch. It
Oh.
has a canister on it, so I light it, and I'll walk around my garden, I'll
Nice.
burn weeds, listen to the radio, music. They're kind of cool.
They are cool. Every once in a while, I'm like, ooh, I'm getting a little too big for my britches with this thing, and I'm gonna have a disaster, but.
Yeah, my mold catches on fire sometimes. I have to like pop it out.
Then look around and see if anyone saw.
I learned today that Laurel is going to start pursuing a CTE. They want to put in a tech center, Laurel schools.
You need to.
That was one of the things that, during that legislative hearing, a lot of discussion, most of the legislators really had no idea how many things districts were doing in terms of like work-based learning and CTE courses, and, they said, yes, and if you help us fund them, because they're expensive, we can do more.
If I remember right, and it was a long time ago, not quite as long as it was for Kelly, but close. When I was in, first grade, you were teaching them, don't eat glue and crayons. Now, if you can't read by first grade, you're behind.
It is different.
Even tech schools are kind of interesting because the speed of advancement puts them at a loss too. You spend a ton of money
Yeah.
putting in a variety of things, and then they're outdated very quickly.
Yeah.
We built the PIC Center in Casper, whole school dedicated to that, designed it after Boeing, big glass workshops. We had a huge fab lab where we could build a whole cabin carried out on a crane. We were designing the curriculum for it, and we were into coding, right? Coding's big, and now they're like, don't teach coding. AI does it all for you. I mean, we had designed hours of curriculum and whole classes around coding, and they're like, don't even have a coding class. And that was, that was like in 4 years it changed.
One of the discussions we had with the congressional office was around, and it was one of the speakers actually of our, the advocacy conference piece of it was the chairman of the FCC. So we've had a lot of discussions with the offices about E-rate, and they're all fairly much, they're pretty much all fairly in favor of like creating new flexibilities because they use, E-rate was transformational, early 2000s and still really important, but the costs and, experiences of school districts, everything is subscription based. A lot of your equipment is outdated within a couple of years, and so part of our discussion was how to create more flexibility within E-rate for districts to be able to use it for real academic purpose. And not just, internet in various places.
Right.
And there seemed to be a lot of support for it. Now, will Congress get behind it? They can't even pass a budget, so we'll see. But it was good to hear that everyone was thinking about it. Do you want to talk more? Or? Okay. And I guess I would just, when you all feel like you want to start wrapping things, we can do this. I think this part, it's 6 o'clock, so we could get through this Envision Future piece probably in a half hour, maybe less if you want to be done at 6:30 or, it's your meeting, so I'm happy to do whatever you'd like.
Yeah, I think we push and get as much
Okay,
done as we can.
great.
We kind of planned to be here
Okay,
for like till 8-ish,
Yep.
so,
yeah.
yeah.
We'll keep going and, that sounds good. We'll keep going and if you guys want to call it, we will get to a point where, I'll take all this back and we'll draft it all up, but, and we might have lots of changes, but I think let's get to where we can and,
What do you want to walk away with? Would you want to walk away with goals?
So I think that what might be helpful is we'll get through this Envision Future piece and then we can talk about your 3 to 5 goals, and I think that would be an ideal stopping point. And that will also give you some time to think about, okay, what are the things that will help us get to the strategic objectives part, to finishing out those goals. And those are the 1 to 2 year actions. But then when we come back together next time, I'll have everything drafted as far as we've gotten, and then we can say, yep, these are things are still consistent, or these are not. And then we can really outline some of those strategic objectives. Does that sound good? Okay. All right, so first part of the Envision Future is what is called the Big Audacious Goal, and this is essentially just an overall description of the world as changed by the Canyon Creek School District. So these are the things that, as a school district, you want a child's experience to fit within this big thing. So whether it's every child leaves our school district prepared to be successful in high school and beyond, and we provide, you know, X opportunities for every student, or maybe it's, you know, every student has the skills they need to be mentally well and with high social competencies. These are like the more broad things, and then we'll get into kind of like the specifics of goals that will help us achieve this big audacious goal. But this is the thing that it's bold and like a stretch. So you don't want it to necessarily be your status quo right now. So if, for example, maybe you're struggling and have historically struggled with literacy or passing levies, we could include something in here that we're a school that builds community support that results in, you know, improved outcomes for students. And then we can get into like what that actually looks like with the details. But I think that you want to be thinking about where are the places that are strengths that you can grow upon, and areas that have been a struggle that you really need to improve upon. And then with the other piece of this, think about taking the resources you have consistent with your core purpose and core values and applying those resources the best of your collective abilities to improve the provision of services to children enrolled in Canyon Creek schools over the next 10 to 15 years. So these are the things that, like, if everything falls into place, this big audacious goal will be realized. And interestingly, the first time you all did this, I'm guessing Deborah probably did it with you. Do you remember?
None of us were on the board at that time.
Okay, no, okay.
Yeah, this is like so old.
Before, okay.
Yeah.
I'm reading some of it, and this is definitely a Deborah document. I can normally tell. But I think there is an opportunity here to really think about when a student starts kindergarten and then leaves, what are the things that they're able to do and families experience in that whole set of years that they're here. And on the flip side, if a kid is here for only 1 year, what are the things that will make it the most impactful school year they'll have in their entire life? Like lifelong impact for kids. So with that in mind, when you think of a big audacious goal, what do you think of in terms of your school district?
Let me ask a question
Yeah.
that's going to put Kelly on the spot, and I do not expect him to have an answer. Where are we at with our academic numbers? 80% are at or above grade level, 75% are at or above. Do we have any clue where we're at right now?
I can get that. I elected not to, just because I didn't know we'd get that far.
And we are speeding. I will be honest, I'm shocked that we've made it this quickly. So you're guys A-team.
Because I wonder where we were at 5 years ago, 10 years ago,
We're
today.
well below. Well below.
Yeah, I think that's got to be one of our first goals. Is
Yeah,
we need to be at or above grade
I
level.
think
for the
by
majority of our
third grade, they
students.
need to be at all students.
Yeah, I would say that'd be an audacious goal.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
At or above grade level in literacy. In math, probably.
ELA, math, and
Yeah. Definitely those two at the third grade.
Yeah, I think those two are probably the most foundational.
you took the H out of it too.
Third grade.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We did our initial screeners, you
Yes,
know,
I
we're
heard about that.
we're hovering around 36%.
Yeah,
So,
those are rookie numbers. We got to boost them up.
yep.
To quote the movie.
Well, and I think most people, I mean, if you have those two, everything else follows. I mean, social studies, science. I mean, those are the things that enable a student to be able to improve their comprehension across subjects. I think the average person would be shocked to know that, like, for example, in Montana, 80% of Native kids are not proficient in reading, and 76% of free and reduced lunch students are not proficient in reading statewide. I don't know what, I mean, and I will say, like, district to district, it's pretty consistent in those demographics, regardless of,
Socioeconomic.
yeah. I mean, you'll have kids who are always doing well because that's, and sometimes you're a district of a lot of wealth and parents who can be very engaged and, get the tutoring a student needs, and so it sometimes hides those numbers, but on the whole, I mean, there are very few outliers in the state when it comes to students who fall into those demographics, which is
So that
tragic.
falls right in our numbers, right? 36% of our kids are at or grade level, with our current trainer.
When you think about what a goal would be, I mean, essentially you'd want 100% of students at grade,
At grade level, at or above.
and that is, I mean,
At or above.
Yeah.
that is audacious and it should be. But it's doable. I mean, it has been done before.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people will water that down to 85%. I saw Bozeman did that.
Then you're not really striving for perfection.
No. And all
That's
kids,
what you
right.
should be striving for.
I think so.
Yeah. Well, and I think that there's a beauty of independent elementaries that there are lots of challenges, but because you have them at an age where they're truly developing, like their brains are firing on all cylinders, and a lot of very difficult adult problems they may be experiencing but maybe don't understand yet, or haven't had the opportunity to make like bad choices for themselves in a lot of sense. And so I think elementary school is just very special because you can do a lot to set them up for success for the rest of their life.
Well, the first 3 years, right?
Yeah, and the data
Well,
tells
if we
us
can
that.
get it, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, after third grade, it's
very
hard to
hard.
change your trajectory.
So I guess one thing I would say is, in order to, because we know that when students are at grade level, it's normally because all of the other things are falling into place too. Like they're not having a lot of, on the whole, students wouldn't be having a lot of mental health challenges or like coping issues. So what are the other things that ensure that we get to 100% on grade level that you would want to see in a big audacious goal?
I think like if you're encompassing all that, one of the things would be us getting title funding.
Yeah.
And,
Become a whole school Title I.
and that would help a huge, would help us out fiscally and financially, and guarantee take some burden off some of our parents and families in the community because of having to pay for some of those things. And so I think that
Would give more resources.
would give,
How close are you?
We,
We're
very
there.
close. In fact, our numbers allow us to apply for it. We just didn't have an MTS. We don't have a fully functional MTSS system in place, lack of personnel. But we're putting it there. We're part of the state pilot. so
Yeah. Oh,
we're-
you are, okay. Cool. I think those are,
if
So
you're
we're
on
trying to
there, then
structure
you might
a line
as well
of
wrap the
stars.
levy in there as well.
Yeah, Bill. Gosh, sure would like to pass one.
I would personally not want to see that as one of our goals. that would really, as not a board member, I mean, as a board member, yes, I wanna see it pass. But as someone looking from the outside, if I see that a goal of the board is to pass a mill levy, I'm going to be saying, well, if that's their goal, that says they were trying to drive increased funding, not make the most of what they have. Not, we aren't doing that.
Yeah, I don't agree with that because.
But that's what it's gonna say to me.
I don't think that people actually understand school financing enough to know that why we even ask for levies. Like, they don't even get why we have to ask for levies. And so, I mean, I think if you put that as a goal, you're not that we want to ask our taxpayers for more money, but to be able to give all these underlying things, we have to pay for it somehow. And so if that's our push is to, you know, give these kids the best of the best and bring them up to that high level of achievement, we've got to have the funding to do it. And part of that is a levy, unfortunately, because that is the reality of how
It
the
pays for
system is set up.
resources.
Yeah.
I think what I'm hearing is that, and I think there's a way to talk about this that achieves both goals, because I think the point I hear you're supportive of, and outside of, you know, Joe out on, you know, walking down the street, you want the community to be able to understand these are the outcomes that we want for our students. Then we have an opportunity to say, okay, what are the barriers that are preventing us from getting to that? Funding to support these programs that will do that is a barrier. I think that's where we can say, and we would probably do it in terms of like formatting this, identifying it as a strategic objective. We need X amount of funding to pursue these evidence-based strategies to improve these outcomes. The mechanism in which the legislature and our state allows for that to happen is through a levy. I mean, right, wrong, or indifferent, it's what they, I mean,
It's
they
what
could
it
change
is,
the system. It is what it is. And so I think if we can connect the pieces of, these are the outcomes we're striving for, these are the barriers that prevent us from achieving those or even pursuing them, and this is how we're going to address that barrier by doing X, Y, and Z so we can pass a levy and fund the programs that will achieve these outcomes.
And I
Do you think
think
that-
also kind of built in there is that's also giving transparency to the community. This is what we're looking for, but here's our problem. You know, you want it, we'd love to give it to you, but this is the reality of it. Here's the transparency of it. Here's why we can't do that, you know?
I just
Like,
say use caution in our language.
Yeah, oh, definitely,
We don't
yeah.
wanna go over to Nybauer's or Gables and say, all right, we're increasing your taxes, just get that through your thick skull, even though we want to. Don't put that in there.
Right. I mean, I think,
Didn't type.
but I think they, you know, it's just a necessary evil of life, unfortunately. Like, that is how our system is set up. Taxes are one of those ugly things that we have to do. My view on that is, these are the kids that are gonna be taking care of our sorry butts when we get old. We want them educated. Like, we want the best of the best. So why wouldn't I help pay that forward? Like, somebody did it for me, why wouldn't I help pay that forward?
I think there's an opportunity to flip the script here too. Because does anyone love always paying taxes? Maybe not, but it is truly, especially when we talk about our schools, it is an investment in the outcomes of your children. And I think that, that is like a very, if any parent feels that, I mean, that is it, most parents will do anything through hell or high water to get their kids what they need, regardless of the barriers that are in front of them. And so I think there's probably an opportunity here to phrase things and also start setting up the conversation of we must make investments in our students if we want them to be successful. And clearly, status quo of 36% on grade level is not what any of us want for our kids, but these are the things we have to do to overcome those barriers. Does that resonate with?
Yeah, I think we have to couch our language on that.
I think I'd like to see a hairy, audacious goal more around the verbiage of becoming a comprehensive K-1 school. And with that then
Yeah.
would be, we would have to pass levies so we could have a football team. We would have to pass levies so we can have a speech and debate team. Expand, build some locker rooms or whatever it is, right? But my goal would be to be a comprehensive K-8 school that serves the community well and retains staff. So we have to become competitive with the evil empire. District 2.
I'm not gonna put that in my notes. I'm picking up what you put down.
But I think, I see that's where I think our energy should be going more. And then, to me, like passing a levy, title, these would all be strategies that the board would,
Yeah.
would kind of glean
Yeah.
onto and hold me accountable.
Those are those strategic objectives.
Yeah.
Like they're
Yeah.
the tools to get to this thing.
Right. But I don't know how to word that. I don't know if a comprehensive K-8
I mean, I
county
would say
school-
that is that's a big audacious goal that's not gonna get done in a year or, you know, a couple years.
Well, comprehensive's kind of relative, what's that mean, right? But I would think a full menu of activities,
Yeah.
offerings.
Which
Well-
ties back into, you know, everything we want to offer these kids, you know.
But it can include the K-3 goal, having everyone at grade level play,
Oh, yeah.
you know.
Well, yeah, academics, I think that just needs to stand alone for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that we should pull that out.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, that's really our purpose.
Well, because I mean, and the thing is, when you aren't, more or less battling with kids to get them on grade level or struggling to experience that growth, then they can fully enjoy and experience and grow in like their actual interests because they have the baseline they need to be successful in whatever their interests are. And I mean, once you're after third grade, you really, that's the time when children get an opportunity to really start discovering who they are and what their interests are and what their passions are. And it sets them up for success to be able to say, I could pursue all of these different things and explore all of these different opportunities so that I have a beginning understanding of who I am as a person and what drives me intrinsically.
So the document they have, the strategic direction, I'm thinking these are the audacious kind of targets.
Yeah, so if you look at, we're actually about to get to okay,
Goals and objectives.
yep.
I guess,
The goals fall underneath all of this, but if you look at that envisioned future piece where it's like our staff, administration, and board provide leadership collaboration, that is the piece that really, let's see. No, not there. That's the piece that like exemplifies what your big audacious goal looks like. So we would say, I think it's totally appropriate in your big audacious goal to say every child is at or above grade level. I think that underneath the vivid description piece, we would say prioritizing ELA and math each student will be proficient by the 3rd grade, ensuring a trajectory of success through 8th grade. And then that's where we can also talk about, we offer a comprehensive menu of activities. That's the vivid description
Okay.
that falls under that.
I just have to, I worry about this school. And we don't know what the impact of the House Bill 203 is
Yeah.
going to have on this school. There was a mass exodus. This year we were able to build our population. But the population that we built with doesn't necessarily, they're a challenging group of kids. And I do think if we don't have some visionary effort on where we want to be in 5 or 6 years, and we can't provide some of this that District 2 does, I don't see this school making it.
Yeah.
So when I see goals like keep our class sizes small, that kind of thing, I don't know if we're in an environment where we can really think that. And these guys have some heavy lifting to do and
Yeah.
some visionary thinking to do, because
I think
I
class
don't know
size-
what the impact of this bill's gonna do. I don't necessarily know. If we just become like the dumping ground of all the kids that are kicked out of District 2, and then we won't be able to retain staff because they're already fed up with some of the behaviors that we're having. And here it is, September. And I just worry about it.
Yeah.
So I guess maybe that's why I'm leaning towards this idea of let's think about this comprehensive high school. Let's put a full court press on it. Let's make it bigger.
Yeah. Well, I think there's there's a lot to be said for, small classrooms have their benefits, but I think what you're probably looking for is individual personalized opportunities for kids. Because that's what I think, most people when they think about the value of a small classroom, it's because you get one-on-one attention.
Yeah.
You can do that. That is the beauty of some technology, is that you really can become much more efficient in other areas that allow a teacher to be one-on-one and differentiate with a lot of kids. But it does take, a lot of professional development. It takes a lot of buy-in. It takes parents willing to say, it's not how it was when I went to school, and it may not make sense to me, but we're going to utilize these evidence-based strategies to get to this place. And so with that, it takes, the visionary piece is, you're spot on. And then there's a whole nother piece of how do you communicate that with people who you need their buy-in, but it doesn't come naturally to them. Or understanding it doesn't come naturally.
And if you're turning over staff regularly, it's very hard to maintain.
Yeah.
So in that large goal, there has to be efforts to increase salary, improve our teaching core, and retain staff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is a challenge, especially if we're getting all the hooligans,
Right, exactly. Yeah.
monkeys coming over from Riverside, Amy.
Yeah, we got some monkeys.
We shouldn't talk about the 5th grade class like that.
And I don't necessarily mind that, and I think my concern is just the longevity.
Yeah. Well, what does it mean for the kids when, there's not an expectation? It's very hard when there is not an understanding on the student's part of this is how you act, and this is the expectation in a school building or in the grocery store. And there's lots of reasons that kids act out.
And I guess I'm kind of setting you up because for some direction, we need in our strategic plan verbiage around House Bill 203.
Yeah.
I mean, that's huge. So you have the ability to say no to some kids that might be climbing walls, but yet let some in. I mean, somehow we're gonna have to get a hold of that a little bit.
Yeah, and I will say I mean, we can pull directly from the bill because there is like a set of criteria that,
Yeah, because it says in there, if it's a drain on your district, basically, it's not that word, but
Yeah.
there's a drain on the district.
Building can't handle it.
Yeah.
Physical
then-
resources.
and I mean that, the point is not to diminish the education of other students. The point is to, I mean, I think the bill sponsor would say, the point is to encourage, innovation in opportunities. And it presents itself, I think, in a difficult manner when you are in an area like the Billings area,
Well, there's a lot
where
of
there
choice.
are, yeah, and I mean, there's a lot of, I mean, Billings has a lot of, they can scale a lot of things that other AA's couldn't even think of either. I mean, because they are, 17,000 kids out there. And, I mean, there's no way even a place like Butte could think about a lot of the things that Billings can think about. Because, the scaling is just different, in different environments. But I think there's an opportunity to think really thoughtfully about this because not every parent is looking for, I mean, it's the same reason I went to Carroll College instead of the University of Montana. Like there is value to
And that's small.
knowing every teacher and student by name. And how do you communicate that and ensure that every parent knows that that's what they get when they come here and every student goes home and says, I love my school, I know what's expected of me, I have structure and I'm able to explore my interests. So how do we put all of those pieces into action for you? While also having, guardrails in place that ensure you can, improve academic outcomes for the students that are here.
I think it presents us kind of a dichotomous issue because I'm glad the legislators are promoting innovation, right? We could promote innovation and we would, but we can't pass levies, right? So then one way for us to gain money is to have more kids come in. But then we lose our community feel.
Yeah. And does it have to be an either or?
Yeah, well, I don't know. That's my question. I don't know. I tend to be thinking a little more sinister behind that bill for, yeah, I mean, they say innovation, but where?
Well, and I think that, there is, for example, we had 2 charter school bills that have similar words, very different ways about getting there. If you'd had this conversation 10 years ago, it would have looked very, very different. And I think that, legislators are normal people too. And they'll hear different ideas or different things, and sometimes you have to reel them back in and say, let's try to find mitigate harm is what I would say is a lot of what the job is mitigating harm. And so how do we continue to encourage legislators to be supportive of public schools when there's a whole other entities and narrative that is encouraging privatization, essentially, that leaves the kids behind whose parents, can't afford a private school or are not, you know. I mean, it creates a whole slew of issues. So I think that there is but I do think that you're spot on in terms of this could be an opportunity to be very visionary, and this is achievable. I truly believe that like a thriving school of your size is achievable, but it's ensuring that you are able to show that and take the actions of changing trajectories for students, which as a country we're struggling to do for lots of reasons. And I think we're at a point where if you're working in schools, it's because you really care about the outcome of young people. And there's a beauty in that, but we also need to figure out ways to course correct so that we can, every student will be at grade level and can be successful. Because what does that mean for our state when we, do not have a group of kids who can operate in a work setting successfully?
Yeah, I agree.
But I wouldn't stress about, it's okay to stress about House Bill 203, and I totally get it. But we can thread the needle in here in terms of these are the things that will preserve. I think that we can preserve the school identity and community identity while also balancing the guardrails that exist for you to ensure that every child's education is preserved. And if I struggle, I will talk to Lance and he will help me too. But he is quite the wordsmith. But I think that we can, I feel confident in our ability to.
We need the guardrails
Yeah.
there. I do think we can have the large goals out there.
So,
These guys have more context and depth with this community than I do.
Yeah.
So I'll rely on them.
I guess when you think about, in terms of, being visionary as a board and the things that are necessary to take you from 37% at grade level to, let's say, even 50%. Where are the areas that you think that what are the contributing factors to that level?
Teacher retention's the first one.
Okay.
Yeah. Quality teacher retention.
Yeah.
Are you utilizing a lot of emergency authorizations?
Well, I'm going to be.
It's a norm. I will say
It's a
that
norm.
I think that we have agreement in this next session that whatever the new Teach Act is going to be, that emergency authorizations will be included in that QEP number.
Well, I have a student teacher teaching right now that we're trying to get authorization for, and I have a music opening that no applicants. Do you want to teach music? I'll give you a verse.
That's hard.
But so that's kind of
that's
what
where we're at.
That's kind of what I'm talking about, right? So if I think of my guitar teacher, right? He is a guitar extraordinaire, right?
Yeah.
He has a name around here. He teaches. He's amazing, right? And he has all these families that play guitar. Now I take lessons. I don't play very well. He has 5 kids, I think. Do you think he's going to send his kids to a school that doesn't offer music? No.
Yeah.
I don't care if he lives way out there, he's not going to. They'll take him in. Right? And that's what I'm talking about, that somehow we got to be able to expand our offerings for kids.
Yep. I think this is,
crazy.
well, and this is good because we can include like one of the goals being teacher recruitment and retention of some sort. We can
Has to
phrase
be
that however
part
you
of
want. But within the strategic objectives, let's start thinking about, these are the strategies that we want to pursue to fix these things. There's obviously no silver bullet, but like, there are things that we can be doing to hopefully, change that direction. And I mean, it's hard because it's a nationwide issue. And it has come to Montana, and we already are, people who are moving here are not moving here to be teachers. And meanwhile, you have a lot of districts who, were having to look at laying off teachers because they did not have the funding to support them, which causes a whole nother, it's such a dichotomy to be in, of where you're having to lay off teachers because you can't afford them, but you can't find enough teachers to teach the classes that you'll have to have. And that, I'm hoping that is a piece that we will be able to address in this new school funding proposal, but it's also, do I think we'll get everything we're asking for? No. I do think we'll get something though, but that's where, we could include some communication strategies as a strategic objective in terms of communicating the value of investing in quality teachers, and the way that we can make investments if the state is not going to pony up money is through levies. And levies aren't the answer to everything, but there is something to be said when, payroll is 90% of your budget and you're still not able to meet having a music teacher on staff.
So I think PD, retaining staff are some of the issues.
Is that
I-
like quality of PD or more PD opportunities?
I think it's quality and it's not the right PD.
Okay.
It's like scraping the wrong
Yeah.
window.
I think we shouldn't lose focus on our other issues that are cropping up. The building is aging. And if we don't put into our strategic vision that we have to start looking at maintaining the infrastructure within the building, we're gonna lose the building.
Oh, yeah. I think also with that is to work in some type of growth with our physical structure. We do want to grow to a certain extent. We want to keep that small community feel, but in the way this world works, we have to have some growth to be able to maintain even having the school. So.
Well, and before we had the conversations about the House bill, you were projecting, 3-4 years maybe, that there'll be a lot of residential kind of impact in this area?
Not if
Then
they
it went
keep
from
changing the
residential
zoning.
to limit like commercials now.
It's all going
It's
commercial.
resumed commercial.
But like that, is that place north of the zoo, that's in our district, right?
No,
No, it's not. The other side of Zoo
It's on the
Drive
other
is,
side. That's
Zoo
not
Drive
ours.
splits it right down the middle.
Zoo Drive, well,
If you kept going down Zoo Drive,
We don't
straight
catch
to the
enough of-
roundabout,
oh,
to the left of the roundabout, it's
I
all,
gotcha.
but that's gonna hit in a couple of years.
Are you in
it's
the
next
county?
year.
Yeah.
You're in, okay.
I think the growth here is positive. It's really good. Across the field, on the corner of 48th and Nivehour, like there's a whole new 50 to 70 houses being built there. So I think it's really looking good for our budget wise.
See, and I
So how far
always
north
don't
is our
get that
line go?
because Yeah, because everything I see, I mean, they've got zoning changes all over. There's
No,
zoning things go
it's
up
for the ones
all
that
over for
Yeah.
changing a lot of stuff to commercial.
Because it
Do we-
includes your subdivision.
Not that commercial doesn't help us. We need a mixture of both, but we also need homegrown kids
Yeah,
in the district.
no one wants to send their kids to the industrial park for
Exactly.
reading class.
Right.
Well, then how far west does our district go? Do we pick up
56.
Beretta?
No.
No, that goes Laurel?
Laurel.
I don't know, I just
I'll
look
send
at the
my
bus.
kids here though.
Yeah.
I mean, we have so much of our district that heads that way that is not gonna be developed into that kind of stuff, you know?
I mean, there's a lot of houses
Yeah.
growing up
Well,
there
they
though.
paved it, so could change.
They're paving
They
it,
did
yeah,
get it
right.
paved, huh?
It is done.
Do you know
I just
Oh,
don't see a
great.
ton of houses.
how
going up.
many
No, it's
homeschool
not
kids
great.
are in your district boundaries?
I'm not a fan.
What was the
Just wait till they
question?
shut the bridge
Homeschool
down.
kids in your
I think
district
five
boundaries?
A
miles.
few.
Yeah, there's a few, but not a lot, and I just saw that on our infinite campus.
Okay.
We take a lot of out-of-district kids here.
Mhm.
I mean, that's I
To our
think,
advantage a little bit.
yeah, and that's where, I mean, I think that's where,
It's a right.
for some districts, House Bill 203 is gonna be a real challenge. And for some districts, it's gonna be beneficial, like significantly beneficial. And the sponsors, I guess, goals were really to encourage districts to level up essentially if they were starting to lose kids. But I think that it reminds me a lot of the Flathead, so like there's a lot of kids that do not go to Kalispell Public Schools, but go to a number of the independent elementaries that are all surrounding the Flathead area, and they do very well. Because parents want that community tight-knit feel for their kids in a school where every teacher knows their name and they know every teacher's name. And so I think there's opportunity there. And the reason I mentioned the homeschool student is because you can collect part-time A and B for kids that you get for something. So like, for example, if you could get a music teacher, can you get some homeschool kids who would like to come and participate? And for a lot of kids, they come, they realize, oh man, school is fun. Start talking to their parents and say, I'd like to try to go more. So it's not a great fit for all schools, but I just like to mention it because for a lot of school districts, if you can open the door a little bit and get kids involved in a couple classes, one, they bring a new and diverse perspective that is sometimes a real benefit to your students and for those students, because it opens up a whole new world sometimes for those kids, and sets them up for success if they decide they want to pursue, full-time school when they're in, middle school or high school. So I just mention it because it's less of a drain on districts now than it would have been before because you can collect part-time A and B. And so you are not necessarily taking away from the kids that are in your building right now if you have them come participate.
I don't know what that percentage is.
I know we had a couple homeschool kids come
Come
last year
back.
for music, and that kind of stuff, and I think we operate with that philosophy.
Yep.
But that's kind of what I'm getting at. We're gonna have to expand our offerings.
Yep.
How many people, or how many kids left when there was the mass exodus? Do
50.
you have a solid number on that?
Yeah, it's like 52, I wanna say.
And those kids left, and those were probably really good
They're all
kids.
middle school kids, which you get more money for.
I wouldn't say
It's
they're all good
it's
kids,
probably
but-
about a $300,000 head.
Right.
Yeah.
I think one of our goals should be to try to get, even though it might not be them specific kids, but get those kids back to our school.
We're trying, you bet.
Right.
And a lot of it's just gonna have to be like, now they're at middle schools where they're playing basketball or whatever, and they're not probably gonna leave their teams, right? So it's really keeping a hold of our 7th grade class, our 6th grade class, making sure they stay here. So we gotta get more people involved in activities and make sure we can say, yeah, look what we have here, you know, compete.
Right.
Sounds like there's probably an opportunity for like maybe more robust communication with the broader community too. Because I think unless you're engaged in the school district, you rarely know what's going on in it.
I think we could always communicate better, definitely. There's interesting nuances with that though, because we belong to a co-op with the other schools,
Okay.
and there's conversation about, you know, just taking our kids, and you can't, you know, especially with the new House bill, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I wanted to have a preschool here, and the county school superintendents were going, well, you know, if the kids go there for preschool, they might stay there forever.
Which is, that's okay.
And
Okay, it's great.
I'd say that's a strategy.
That's not a problem.
it's good for us, but not, you know, not them, because
I'm
so
worried
they're
about them.
hesitant.
You know, I think, well,
Scarcity mentality is what it is.
right, which is the exact opposite of what you want to be cultivating as a community.
I agree.
Are you all pursuing the early targeted intervention programming?
Literacy?
Yeah,
Yeah.
you are, okay, good. I think it could be a game, I mean, it's the first time that the legislature has said, yes, we will fund 4-year-olds, even if it is towards, you know, stated goal of improving literacy, which all for, but I think that it would, and I think legislators would acknowledge this too, it will open the door to showing that when you are supporting students at younger ages, they are more successful as they grow.
Sure.
And I mean, even they have this thing called the constitutional players, and it's essentially, you know, all of the people who are listed in the Constitution that impact education come together a couple times a year, and they had a couple national think tanks essentially that look at what are the things that actually move the needle for kids. Early childhood education, number one. It is always early childhood education and teacher effectiveness, which is improved through professional development and the like. So I think the data will begin to show them in Montana. It's the same as other places that when we invest in early childhood education, the benefits are tenfold. And so that will,
I think since 1962, we know that
We
Head
know.
Start and early
Yes.
intervention, what's goofy about that is it's volunteer.
right,
And how about making a administrative mutable decision and fund the damn thing? And really move the stars of kids?
yeah,
Because it's
We were
me
just talking about that
reaching out to some families. I can't necessarily put it here, so it has to be at home, and then they're gonna do it online, which actually I would argue is another ill that we're dealing with. I'm getting negative, and I'm sorry.
no, but it is where I will
Just thinking
say,
this through.
it's one of those things that, it's a lot of compromise. And, so in order to get some people to be supportive of the whole, you have to include things that, will give them the carrot that they need to get over the finish line.
Yeah.
Even if it's not always ideal. But, I try, my perspective is always, I don't like to let the perfect be the enemy of the good. So if we're moving
Sure.
forward, that's positive.
Yeah,
Because
steps forward.
oftentimes in education, and sometimes it's not the direction of lawmaking bodies sometimes. So, you do have to, I mean, it's a constant effort. So, I think we are getting to, actually pretty close to a good stopping point. One thing I did want to talk a little about is it's on the last half of what they did have at the bottom. It says page 4 of 9 in the 2011 version. And actually, you know what, we can. Oh, it's exactly the same as the envision future on the first page too. But, are there pieces in here, so I'll just read them off. Our staff, administration, and board provide leadership, collaboration, trust, and integrity. Our students are provided a holistic education, including the arts and sciences, and lead in academic achievement. Our staff works as a team using creative and varied resources to advance student learning opportunities. Our parents are actively involved in their child's education. Our environmentally responsible facility serves the needs of our entire community. Do all of these things still feel relevant? Or are there updates of things that exemplify or are a vivid description of what would be your big audacious goal?
So you're saying like this, do these still hold true to what, because I don't know that they do. I mean, they do.
Well, if you think about our big audacious
audacious
goal of having a comprehensive and education and or school and meeting those academic standards by third grade, do these goals align with that? Is that what you?
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, the growth that you're talking about is, I think, encompassed in the facility that serves the needs of the community, because that could mean growth, it could mean updates and repairs. We're not identifying it.
But does environmentally responsible?
That's a little vague.
Yeah.
And it's always interesting because sometimes there'll just be like context that we don't get in these documents, that something was going on or
At that time.
Right,
yeah.
Yeah. So, just like our facility,
Yeah.
like if you take out that,
Provide a facility that serves the need of our entire community.
Okay.
and that's a little bit vague too, in the sense of it sounds more like, I mean, we currently have our building open for use by the community by request.
Right.
But what does, I guess, that mean? Is
I
that
mean-
one of our goals?
I think if you are interested in, so sometimes districts will pursue strategies to expand community relationships and engagement and really understanding of what actually happens in the school, because, I mean, you're not unusual in the fact that a majority of your population is more elderly and may or may not have grandkids engaged in the school, but even if they do, it's not like they're always the ones that know what's happening and or have, you know, notices coming home or are hearing stories. So there's an opportunity to pursue strategies of like more concerted efforts to bring in people in the hopes of improving or instilling a personal connection so that they will be supportive of school priorities and investments.
Like community barbecue?
For example.
A dynamic facility that provides the needs of our growing community.
And it sounds like there are not really other options available. Like if a group of, you know, if you wanted to have a family kickball night, is there anywhere else you'd go?
Not in the district,
Yeah.
that I know, think of.
Yeah.
And I think there is a lot of opportunity to, the data around people's responsiveness when they feel like they belong to a community is very strong. And so you're much more likely to have success because of the buy-in from people who don't necessarily have a child in the school, because they want their community to succeed. And they have a connection, even if it's not through a child.
And how about like the one above it, like our parents are actively, it's not just our parents. I mean, we have grandparents who are raising kids, we have foster situations,
Right.
we have all kinds of situations, so you need different verbiage around that a little bit.
Encourage family involvement in our child's education.
Say that again, Donnie.
Family involvement in the child's education.
I mean, I don't know another good way to encompass all that,
Or
like,
our families and community partners are actively involved.
Stakeholders,
Stakeholders, there you go.
maybe. That's where I was going with the last one is, it's not necessarily, I don't know if we want to serve our stakeholders in our community, but we want to partner with them in creating a community that is student-centered, meets these goals.
yeah.
We want our parents coming in and giving us feedback. We want, well, that's the whole purpose of this out here. We're allowing flag football for the first time out here. And I'm getting a few complaints about parking, but it's been a pretty positive thing.
We don't have any parking.
Parking's gonna be an issue till end of time for everyone, so.
I saw the cones up in the neighbors' yards.
Yeah.
One of the things that's been interesting to me now that my minions are in sports is coaches from previous years reaching out, hey, Reed's coach used the soccer field this spring. Can we use that field again? Everything in buildings charges too much money.
Yeah.
And we do it for free right now, we might have to rethink that, but that's the partnership that I'm talking about as we think about expanding. I mean, we're not gonna be able to build a new gym with facility fees, it's like.
Can't look like Elysian.
No, probably.
But that is where, if there is goodwill extended to other places in the community, maybe there is a new commercial business whose, child got to be part of it or family got to be part of it, and they want to take advantage of the innovative education tax credit. And like, those are the kind of connections, especially in smaller communities, that really make all the difference, because you're not going to build a gym with facility fees. And if you're going to pass a bond, you probably want it to go to the academic part of the building. If you don't have, you want to ensure that the classrooms are ready to go before you start building, activities centers. Even though there's a lot to be said for the things that kids really love about school. But that is where there is a lot of opportunity in terms of like, what are the levers that you can access because of that partnership? And a lot of it's organic. But if, you're able to communicate, these are the things you're on the hunt for. Sometimes if people are willing to help when you don't expect it, it's just they don't know you need the help. In terms of the staff piece, I'm curious what you think what your teachers' thoughts would be on if we are on the right track here, or if they would have feedback, or what they would like to see.
Increased wages.
Okay.
These guys did a wonderful job of leading negotiations for the next 3 years, and they got a nice raise. And we're still, you know, about at 85% of our payroll, so that's good. We're healthy that way. But we still rest about $9,000 behind District 2.
Okay. Do you take advantage of the Teach Act, extra QEPs?
The extra pay,
Yeah.
no. We
Do you
looked
know
at
where
that.
you'd be?
The quality educator.
Yeah.
We just didn't have enough people that would qualify.
Okay.
They're not here long enough.
We just fall short.
That's helpful information because we're in the middle of talking about how we can improve it and grow it, and kind of in negotiations with legislators who would lead that type of legislation, and so that's helpful context because I'll bring that back.
We can't retain them long enough to qualify for it, you know, because they have to be here for a while or something like that. I can't remember what one of them.
Yeah, it's a period of time and I can't remember.
Well, the biggest thing is, I mean, they get it in their first 3 years, 5 years. I need to double check that.
Yeah.
But I mean, part of it is they can't be on an emergency authorization, and your base has to
And our base is
meet a
not
threshold.
quite there, yeah.
Okay. I'm hoping that some of the changes that we're talking about right now will help districts get there, but I'll look at some of the, we have all the data, so I'll look at yours in particular and see, you know,
And
how
the
we might be able to
emergency,
be helpful.
but the emergency certification may be a, because I think more schools are gonna have to use that.
Yeah.
Oh,
It's not just gonna be, it's not just us, like,
No,
we're
and
not
they-
the only ones. I
Yeah.
think it's gonna be,
And legislators have become very aware that it's not about districts' inability to find qualified teachers, it's because there's not enough qualified teachers. And so you have to, like, there are no other options but to rely on emergency authorizations. I will look into that though, because I really hope in the next, like, fiscal year, everyone's able to access it, because once you hit that threshold, it's free money. Legislators like to say they want districts to have skin in the game, which districts already do. But that's their tagline. And so I think the more that we can show like where we can be more helpful in helping districts get to that point, because it's an extra, well, it's essentially an extra $3,800
I was just gonna say like $3,500
Yeah.
per teacher. And we've been trying to get there
The
for
threshold that kills us, I think.
5
right?
years.
We don't
Okay.
meet the threshold.
We don't meet the threshold, our
And
base
if
isn't
we-
high enough.
If we did bump our base up to that,
We can't
We can't.
do it, it blows us out of the water. We
Okay,
can't.
yeah, and really the goal of it was to, because so many districts, there was, you know, oftentimes negotiations will, statistically, they will benefit more senior teachers. And, you know, there's lots of reasons that ends up happening, but because our base teacher pay, our beginning base teacher pay is so low statewide, that's where we run into issues of being able to retain people. And it does take, I mean, you know, you have to bargain it, so it does, sometimes it's hard to get there.
Yeah, and we just can't get our base up that high.
Okay. I'll take a look, and then I'll bring it up in our next meeting when we talk about what we're going in with this session, because that's context that's really helpful. Because this is legislation that we want to help districts, you know? Okay. And then anything else besides pay that you think, you mentioned PD, higher quality PD. Can you think of other things? Do you get a lot of feedback from teachers?
Yeah, we did great in negotiations and got a
Okay.
ton of feedback. I think one of the other things, and pay trickles into that, but is the feeling of being valued, and ways to show them that. And sometimes all we have is the fiscal component of that, but if we can be more innovative and, we've tried that, we've gone down that road a little bit. We have a 4-day week that was specifically for our teachers and retaining our teachers, but because there aren't a lot of teachers out there, we have to maybe even think farther outside the box than we have in getting them to stay and getting, and I don't know what that looks like, but I think that's one of their big always takeaways, just feeling valued, and some of that comes from our parents and our kids as well. If our kids are not acting the way they should, or our parents aren't acting the way they should, it drains on the teachers, it's so that you kind of have to have that whole sphere of things that works in everybody's favor,
Well, and there's a lot to be said for like secondary traumatic stress in terms of like if there's a lot of chaos at home with kids and teachers are a safe adult, it's a lot of stress for teachers to be taking the stories of 25 kids in, and and none of them leave it at the door when they go home, and that's a lot of mental stress on a person. So there's a lot to be said for finding ways to support them in other manners, especially if you are having a number of behavioral issues. Do you have like counseling staff?
We have a
Have a
full-time
counselor.
team.
Do you have a counselor? Okay. Is that sufficient?
What's that?
Is one sufficient?
No, not right now.
I need a personal one.
Yeah.
I think it's,
That's not a joke though. There's something to be said for schools that have counseling services for teachers and administrators.
Our benefit package provides that, so I do think there's nice support there. I do think we can do some stuff with our benefit package to put more money in teachers' hands as much as possible. That won't impact the general budget, the bottom line. No, we have a full-time counselor. We don't qualify for a full-time counselor, though we pay for one, and she's phenomenal, so.
That's good.
Yeah.
Sorry to
the
interrupt
school
you.
nurse issue too.
We had a school nurse issue, now I have one that wants to be part of the community and stuff, but it's a part-time.
Okay.
There might be a request coming forward to make her full-time, if I were to read the stars.
There is, there's quite a bit of work that goes into it, but the Montana Healthcare Foundation, they provide funding to cover the startup costs of school-based health clinics. And a lot of districts do them all different ways, but if that's something you're interested in, it might be worth, I'll find, last year we had them present at the Indian School Board Caucus Symposium because their pilots were with a lot of majority Native schools. But there's some really cool flexibility that they can bring in with that, and it gives you a partner with community providers so that you're not necessarily having to take on the personnel costs of additional healthcare services for not even just students but families too. So it might be something I always tell people about it because I think it's when I first heard about it I was like, this is too good to be true. But it's nice because it's a partnership with, speaking about partnerships with outside healthcare providers, and so they can they're able to get reimbursed if the families qualify, which, it opens up a lot of doors that sometimes schools that struggle with even finding school nurses have.
Interesting.
Other thoughts? Okay, is everyone exhausted?
Long day.
So next steps, and we can, you wanna do the next ones on Zoom? We
I
can do
would
whatever.
take feedback from these fine people.
Like where, I guess where are the next steps? Tell us how.
Yeah, so next steps, I'll put together the whole draft, and then, as we have it so far, and at that point, then you'll see where the blank spots are, where we'll start filling in. Next time, we will talk about our megatrends analysis, so these are the outside factors that fall under all of these categories that can impact your school district. And it doesn't even necessarily have to have a direct impact, but it could also be indirect, like zoning changes that are resulting in more being rezoned for commercial. That's something that's just helpful, because when you go to update this, maybe it means that there's been an increase in your property tax base. Or if it's, development of 50 new units, you'll be able to compare, like, this mega trend was occurring 2 years ago, did it result in more students? So we can talk about, like, we anticipate enrollment to increase because of these new housing units, or depending on what kind of industry goes in there. I mean, there's lots of ramifications that can happen, positive and negative. So we'll split these up. Normally, I like to do these in small groups, more or less. So what we'll probably do, and you're more than welcome to invite, like, teachers, parents, whoever, too, because sometimes you hear things that you otherwise wouldn't. And we want this to be, it's helpful to get that buy-in early, or hear perspectives early that you might not otherwise have had, instead of waiting until, like, you adopt it as a board and you're taking a public comment, because then you can address some of the issues up front. But we'll talk about them in, like, probably split into 2 groups, and then one group takes 2, the other group takes the other, and we'll do the last one together. And then gather any feedback of what the group might have missed. And then we will go into our strategic objectives, which will really be the things that are our strategies to achieve. Well, actually, we'll work on the goals, and I think I'm going to take a chance at pulling out what it feels like are some of the bigger goals that we've been talking about here, because we don't need to talk ourselves to death, but we want to make sure that it's a thoughtful discussion. And if I'm totally off, you just tell me and we'll redo them. Or we can flush them out more if we're close, but it's not there yet. And add any more that you feel really strongly about. And then we will put together the strategic objectives, which are essentially the strategies to achieve those goals. Those are the 1 to 2 year achievable things. We can do it on Zoom, we can do it in person. Really doesn't make a difference either way. For me, it's whatever you want. And
What is more effective in your experience?
some districts do totally fine and still having discuss. I mean, it kind of depends on what your normal dynamics are, because some districts really need you to be prompting responses or asking follow-up questions. And then others, it's like everyone has a lot to say. So I'm happy to do either.
I don't remember if we had a budget for this
Yeah,
project.
it's just the mileage. Mileage is reimbursed, and then, like, I'm not staying in a hotel or anything. I just drive back. So you guys have. It's not like
Driving back
Vegas or
tonight?
anything. Yeah, we have a staff meeting in the morning, and just I get more stressed when I'm. So you won't. I mean, you don't need to worry about that.
Well, I was just
We
gonna
do have a
say,
line item for it.
okay, I prefer in person if that's within our,
And I prefer in person. I just think
Yeah.
it's good for you guys to come together and continue building as a tight group.
Yeah.
It does.
I think this person's gonna be better for this group.
That sounds great. So what I'll do is, we'll get all of this together and, then we can find another date soon. We can just
How
connect
long
over-
will it take you to pull that together? So like, would we want to tentatively think sometime in November?
You know, I would actually think that we could probably get, let me pull up my calendar. We could probably do, we have IMCEL, so I would say anytime after IMCEL. I
Late
am.
October, 1st of November,
Yeah.
something like that?
Yeah,
Okay.
yep, I am, and actually, the week after IMCEL, we have availability. The week after that, I actually am going to a conference at the Aspen Institute with the Work-Based Learning Collaborative, so hopefully I'll have some information from back to you too, because part of it is focusing on like K-8 work-based learning opportunities too, and like belonging and meaning. It's my first time going, I'm really excited, so hopefully I'll learn something and can bring it back to you. But then after that, we'll be good. I mean, everything gets pretty wide open. And I think we want to, I would say a goal would be to have all of this done before Christmas break. And I would say ideally like November, so that we can, I mean, you can start the second semester with an adopted strategic plan, and also because once the session starts, my availability plummets.
Okay. Well, I think we can do it. It will require us coming up with some work times.
Yeah.
Um,
And
We-
we've gotten a ton done here. I am super impressed. I mean, when I send it, I hope that you will be able to see, like, this has been a really good discussion.
So we'll have potentially another in-person, and then what do we do after that? Is there more?
I think we will, at the next one, we will get all of the parts done in terms of the actual content of the plan, and then it will just be making any revisions. So I think at that point, we can probably do
that via
Zoom.
email or Zoom.
Yep, and there is an opportunity, we'll include language surrounding HB 203 too. And sometimes districts like to start thinking about an action plan, which is essentially like how to achieve those strategic objectives. So who's going to do what over the next 1 to 2 years to achieve these strategies or implement these strategies. I'm happy to help facilitate that. Sometimes people really need it, especially if there's like difficult environments. But a lot of it is just once the board sets this direction, how do you as a superintendent want to work with the staff to implement these things? So I defer to superintendents on the action plan piece because you know your staff better and you know how things will be implemented. But I'm always happy to help too.
My conversation with the board here is that they would use the strategic plan to hold me accountable.
Okay.
So I would think that they would say, you need to focus on this.
Yeah.
And ask for reports. We started talking about having some safety reports and those kinds of things. I would think that this school would come forward with like a goal group and say,
Yeah.
hey, we've been working on teacher retention or whatever, this is kind of where we're at, or
It's a great way to,
to scale it into this small school.
yeah, and the districts that I've seen that have been most successful in carrying these out, and I think this is the catch-22 of the state requiring that districts do this, is that sometimes I fear that it'll just be a check mark that like, oh, we put it together and we never look at it again. But when districts are most successful in achieving the goals in there, it's because there was kind of a delegation of these are our goals and this group is responsible of identifying how we are going to accomplish these strategic objectives and ultimately these goals. So I think that that's totally appropriate and a good plan. Okay.
And we have an action plan, we put it together at school without having this one, so we'll have to spend some time aligning that.
Yeah.
But my vision is that action plan that we have will address some of their asks.
Yep.
And then that group will come in and say, this is what we're doing.
Yep.
To improve our reading scores or whatever it is.
And I think that gives an opportunity for staff to say, well, we were gonna do this, but it doesn't fit in anywhere in this strategic plan. Is this something the board is this actually gonna get us towards achieving these goals? And sometimes there are outliers that, you know, you just need to address that isn't necessarily directly written down here. And that's, you know, that's life.
When have you seen data from the school?
What?
Like, when have you seen our achievement data?
We haven't seen it since,
Last spring?
Pre-COVID, right, or?
Oh,
No, we saw it once since I've been on the board.
Okay.
I'm trying to think,
it's usually
it was,
in the spring.
Carl was still here, so it's been a year?
Yeah,
At least a year.
Yeah.
Probably right before, so this, probably the spring before you came on, maybe?
yep,
Okay.
I think that's right.
That would be really good to,
Well, yeah, I think we just need to build your guys' prowess, so when the groups come in front of you, you can say, you know, hey, what are you doing with this group of kids?
yeah.
Well, and I think what has been hard in the past is it has fallen to Haley to do. There hasn't been a whole collaborative group working on it. It's been Haley driving that, and
Yeah.
the onus needs to be on the whole staff and, you know, more collective.
It gives Haley a lot
Process.
more backing that the board has set this goal. This is what I'm trying to achieve based on the board's recommendation.
Yeah. Gives you guys some authority to scale down into the classroom.
And I will say, I think from what we experience, most teachers, they're glad to see that a board's engaged and care about, you know, outcomes for students.
Definitely here, I think, yeah, I mean, they want to see it, they want to show the good stuff that they're doing.
That's good. Well, I will be in touch. We'll just plan for, I'll send all my dates after MSEL. And then we'll start going from there. And I might try to see